Everyone, so welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to read chapter 4 in this story. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, so don't forget to subscribe this. Press that red button and subscribe my channel. So let's get started. Chapter 4. The sanitary bird, but whether it was about from tears or panic, Sophie couldn't be sure. Everything she knew was wrong. Her entire life was a lie. Fitz nudged her arm. Hey, it's not your fault. You believe what they taught you. I'm sure I did have done the same thing. But it's time to you knew the truth. This is how the world really works. It's not magic. It's just how is it? The castle bells chimed, and Fitz yanked her behind a large clock as a gateway opened. Two elves with floor-length velvet caps gapped over their black tunics emerged, followed by dozens of Blur's creatures marching in military formation drawn down the rocky path. They were at least 7 feet tall and wore only black pants, leaving their thick muscles prominently on display. With their flat noses and coarse grey skin, which fell in flatted folds, they looked part alien, part armadillo. Goblins, Fitz whispered, probably the most dangerous creatures you will ever meet. Which is why it's a good thing we signed the treaty. Then why are they heading? She whispered, heading her voice for trembling. We are dressed like humans. Humans are forbidden in the lost cities, especially here in Lurmandria. Lurmandria is where all the other worlds come together. Gnomes, dwarfs, orcs, goblins, trolls. She was too overwhelmed to even think about the other creatures he was mentioning. So she focused on the better question: why are humans forbidden? He mentioned for her to follow him to a rock further away, swearing behind it. They betrayed us. The ancient counselors offered them the same treaty they made with all the intelligent creatures, and they agreed. Then they decided they wanted to rule the world. Like it even works that way, and started planning a war. The ancients didn't want violence, so they disappeared, forbade any contact with humans, and left them to their own devices. You can see how well that's working out for them. Sophie opened her mouth to defeat her rest, but she could see Fitz's point. War, crime, fine. Humans had a lot of problems. Plus, if everything he was saying was a truth, they weren't her race. The realization chilled her much more than the foregrid wind licking her cheeks. The stories told by the women who did known was as us must have sounded impossible after we disappeared, and eventually they evolved into the crazy maths you have heard. But this is the truth, Sophie. Fitz pointed around them. This is who you are. This is where you belong. Where you belong. She had waited her whole life to hear those three simple words. I'm really an elf, she whispered. Yes. Sophie peeked through the rocks at the glowing castle, a palace that wasn't supposed to exist but was somehow right in front of her. Everything he was telling her was insane, but she knew it was true. She could feel it, like a cruel piece of her identity had clicked into place. Okay, she decided, her head spinning in 1,000 directions. I believe you. A long clunk sounded as another gate closed. Fitz stepped out of the shadows and pulled out a different wand. No pathfinder, sick and back with the Colbert blue crystal. Ready to go home? Home. The word jotted her back to reality. Mr. Swaney would call her mom when she didn't get on the bus. She needed to get home before her mom peaked. Her heart sank a little. Reality seemed so bland and boring after weaving she did seen. Still, she took his hand and stole one last look at the incredible view before the blinding light swept it away. The smoky ash stung her lungs after the crisp, fresh air of Lurmanglia. She looked around, surprised. She recognized the plain square houses on the narrow, tree-lined street. They were a block away from her house. She decided not to ask how he knew where she lived. Fitz coughed and glared at the sky. You'd think humans could handle putting out a few fires before the smoke pollutions the whole planet. They are working on it, she said, feeling a strange need to define her home. Plus, these aren't normal fires. The astronaut used some sort of chemical when he started them, so they are burning white hot and the smoke smells sweet. Usually, wildfires made the city smell like beer barbecue. This time it was a more like melting cotton candy, which was actually kind of nice if it didn't burn her eyes and rain ash. Astronauts? Fitz shook his head. Why would anyone want to watch the world burn? I don't know, he admitted. She admitted she did ask herself the same question and she wasn't sure there, there was an answer. Fitz pulled the silver pathfinder out of his pocket. Are you leaving? She asked, hoping he didn't notice the way her voice hitched. I have to find out what my father wants to do now. If he even knows, neither of us thought you were going to be the girl. The girl? Like she was someone important. If she could hear his thoughts, she did know what he meant. But this time was still a silent mystery, and she still had no idea why. He's not going to be happy. I took you to our cities, he added. Even though I was careful, no one saw us, so please don't tell anyone about anything I have shown you today. I won't, I promise. She held his gaze so he did know she meant it. He released the breath he'd been holding. Thank you. And make sure you act normal so your family doesn't suspect anything. She nodded, but she had to ask one question before he left. Fitz, she squared her shoulders for courage, why can't I hear your thoughts? The question knocked him back a step. I still can't believe you are a telepath. Aren't all elves telepaths? No, it's a special ability, one of the rarer ones, and you are only 12, right? I will be 13 in 6 months, she corrected, not liking the way he did said only. That's really young. They said I was the youngest to manifest, and I didn't start reading minds until I was 13. She fawned. But I have been hearing thoughts since I was 5. 5? He said it so loud it reverberated off the houses, and they both scanned the street to make sure no one was around. "You are sure?" he whispered. "Positive." Walking up in the hospital after she hit her head wasn't the kind of a moment she could forget. She was hooked up to all kinds of crazy machines, with her parents hovering over her, shouting things she could barely separate from the voices filling her mind. All she could do was cry and hold her head and try to explain what was happening to a group of adults who didn't understand, who would never understand. No one could make the noise go away, and the voices had haunted her ever since. "Is that wrong?" she asked, not licking the worry etched between his brows. "I have no idea." His eyes narrowed like he was trying to see inside her head. "What are you doing? Are you blocking me?" he asked, ignoring her question. "I don't even know what is that." She stepped away, wishing the extra piece could stop him from reading her private thoughts. "It's a way to keep a telepaths out, kind of like putting a wall around your mind. Is that why I can't hear you?" "Maybe. Can you tell me what I'm thinking right now?" "I told you I don't hear your thoughts the way I do with the other people." "That's because humans have weak minds, but that's not what I meant. If you listen, can you hear me?" "I don't know. I have never tried to read a mind before." "You just have to trust your instincts. Concentrate. You will know what to do. Try." She hated being bossed around, especially since he wasn't answering her questions. Then again, what he wanted her to do might be the only way to find out why he looked so concerned. She just had to figure out what he meant by listen. She didn't have to tell her ears to hear. Why did why just did? But listening took action. She had to concentrate. Maybe mind reading worked the same way, like an extra sense. She forced on his forehead, imagining she was stretching out her consciences like a mental shadow, feeling her thoughts. After a second, Fitz's voice swept through her head. It wasn't sharp or low like human thoughts, more of a soft whisper brushing around her brain. "You have never felt a mind as quiet as mine," she blurted. "You heard me." He looked pale. "Was I not supposed to? No one else can." She needed a few seconds to process that. "And you can't read my mind?" He shook his head. "Not even when I try my hardest." A whole new world of worries passed down on her shoulders. She didn't want to be different from the other elves. Why? "I have no idea, but when your pair is with your eyes and where you live." He stopped, like he was afraid he did said too much, then fumbled with the crystal on his pathfinder. "I need to ask my dad." "Wait, you can't leave now." Not when she did more questions than answers. "I had to. I have already been gone too long, and you need to get home." She knew he was right. She didn't want to get in trouble, but her knees still shook as he held the crystal to the sunlight. He was her only link to the amazing world she did see, the only proof that she didn't imagine the whole thing. "Will I ever see you again?" she whispered. "Of course, I will be back tomorrow." "How will I find you?" He flushed a small smile. "Don't worry, I will find you." Chapter finish. So, hope you enjoyed today's chapter. If you so, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and tell your friends to watch it and subscribe my channel. So, bye bye. Take care, be happy, stay safe.